Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. What's up, wild ones? Welcome to episode number 165 of the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and today I've got a juicy show for you. Rebekah Borucki, our guest, is someone I feel like I've grown up with over the last few years, as we both used to primarily do fitness-related things and have now branched into deeper and different things. We took this conversation to places we don't go often on the podcast. We got into activism, privilege, miscarriages. We talked about death. We talked about birth. We also covered some God grounds. We got into prayer as a meditation practice and parenting. She's a mom of 5, by the way, y'all, and she's a doula. So she had some really awesome perspectives on these things. I loved this chat and hope you do too. And by the way, if you love it, be sure to share it with anyone you think could use the information, especially busy moms. We really loved up on the busy moms in this one. The show notes can be found at untameyourself.com/episode-165. And if you're listening in iTunes and you haven't left us a review yet, it would be awesome if you could pop in there real quick and leave us a review, preferably 5 stars if that's how you feel, and also say why you love the show. All that does is it just helps us to reach more people like you who could really benefit from all these conversations we're having every single week. Thank you so much, and let's get to the show. I am pumped to have my friend Rebekah Borucki with us today. Bex, I was actually thinking about this before we got on. Did you and I connect? Was it back in like 2013 or 2012? It's been a while.
It's been a really long while. I think maybe earlier than that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like YouTube stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, you do, because we were both doing fitness stuff, and you were like crushing it with like your YouTube fitness videos, and I was like, I'm gonna shoot myself. I have to make one more friggin' fitness video. But I was like, who's this chick? She looks like she's having a good time. So, oh my God. First question. Here we go. What do you love about being a woman?
Oh my gosh. Oh, what do I love about being a woman? Okay. Well, I should say that it's because I got to give birth to my 5 beautiful babies, but it probably isn't just that. I like being pretty. I like, is this appropriate? I don't know if I'm allowed to say this.
Say whatever you want.
I like being pretty. I love navigating the world with this, being allowed to be vulnerable, being allowed to be sometimes strong, sometimes not so strong. Like, I think I have a lot of options as a woman. I think that's the answer.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's talk about that pretty thing for a minute, because
I was in
a conversation recently. Did you and I talk about this? You interviewed me recently. I'm having a moment of feeling like we already talked about this. Did we talk about this? Like the quote, pretty privilege? Someone was giving a friend of mine crap on Facebook where she was just like talking about something, and she got one of those comments, my favorite type of comment, which is like the easy for you, right? Easy for you, like you're pretty and blah, blah, blah. And like, and the fact of the matter is, like, I'm pretty sure there have been scientific studies that like, yes, it is easier for an attractive person to like get by and get attention and not be treated as invisible or looked down upon or be judged in the world. Yeah. How do you, I know you're a person who like cares, like gives a lot of shit about a lot of things. You have great posts on social media. Like you talk about issues and things like that. How do you reconcile? How are you cool with like, yep, I have this privilege. My life might be a little easier in some places. It's certainly not a cakewalk, but how does that land for you?
I have a lot of privilege in a lot of different areas of my life. Like I'm naturally tall. Well, naturally tall. There's no other way to be tall. I'm naturally slim. I'm naturally muscular. I'm biracial, but I tend to be accepted and pass as white. And we all know that there's a such thing as white privilege. Yeah. So I enjoy some privilege, a lot more privilege than people who look more Black than me. Yeah. You know, and I think that there's some parts of my look that would be considered conventionally attractive. But when I say pretty, like as a woman, I really truly believe that every woman can be pretty. I think it's a way that you present yourself. It's a way that you feel about yourself, that you walk, that you move, that you talk, that kind of embraces that femininity, and whatever that means to you. And yeah, so when I say I like being pretty, it's like I like, being sexual. I like putting myself out there in that way.
Cool. I dig it. Yeah, it's really funny. Several weeks ago, a friend of mine had made a post, and a woman on the post had said something about male privilege, and this guy went off on her. And here's what he said. He was like, "Male privilege is a feminist myth." And I was like, that's what I did. I was laughing. I'm like, it was like a Facebook hold my earrings moment. But I'm like, I can't engage with this, because obviously a person that holds that belief or is willing to even like say that to another person. And he was like aggressive and really rude. I was like, not worth my time. But it was just like fascinating to me. Like, what planet do you live on where you think male privilege is a myth? And people listening to the show, no, I'm not into like man bashing or anything like that. No. We love men, women, all the people, all the fluid things in between. You are welcome here at all times. But I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me right now. That would be the same, again, as like an attractive woman being like, I don't have any privilege. I don't get any advantages just because I'm attractive. Like, you do.
Or white privilege. Yeah. I mean, people are going to hear me say that and say that, I have privilege because I have lighter skin. And they're going to be like, oh, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as white privilege. And there's light skin privilege.
Yeah.
Within the colored community, people of color. So it's, yeah, of course it's a thing. It doesn't, it's like when people say they're colorblind. It's so ridiculous. It's like, it's a thing. It's not even something that you can believe in or not believe in. It's a thing. It's how you relate to that and use that, which, is right or wrong.
And I mean, and I laugh. I'm like you, like I'm half Puerto Rican. I'm very ethnically ambiguous. And I mean, I get all the privileges of like a white person. No one has ever treated me like a Latino, which it's just so interesting, all these topics to me. And, because I grew up, here's something, I think you and I interacted on this post I made on Instagram a couple weeks ago, where I was like, I cannot wait to get to New York City and spend some time in like the melting pot I grew up in, because I live in San Diego. Like, I'm tired of being surrounded predominantly by spiritual white people. It puts you in a bubble and like really does get you out of touch with what the rest of the world actually feels like and is experiencing, and like what the hell goes on out there and the actual real things. Like, thank God I have an online community of women who are like sharing their experiences all the time. So I could be like, damn, that's someone's real life experience, is not like going on a beach walk every morning.
Yeah, no, I've had friends very recently, after the election and all that have tried to remind me of how lucky we are. So where I live now and how I live now, like in a predominantly white industry, a white female industry, and, privileged community, that's not how I grew up. So people are trying to remind me, like, we're so lucky. Like, some people don't live this way. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I know some people don't like me. Like, I'm the people that
I'm the people that don't always live that way. Yeah, I grew up with like everyone, like every ethnicity, every race. Like, I remember we moved from Staten Island to New Hope, Pennsylvania, being like, where are all the other people? Yeah. Like, there was one black girl who graduated in 1999. There was like 2 Jewish people. There weren't even any Jews. It was just so bizarre and like culture shock. But what's also interesting is how quickly you get used to that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I try not to get too used to it because I'm afraid of what would happen if I wasn't exposed at all. But, even I live in a farming community right now where 2% of the population is black. There are 0 Jewish population. So, yeah, it's rough and it's easy to get used to.
It's easy to get used to, but also I think this is why people are so ignorant. This is one of the things. Occasionally when I do scroll through what like the general masses are posting on Facebook, I'm just in shock at how ignorant people are of other people's experiences, or like unwilling to consider that other people have very real experiences that are very different from theirs.
I went and saw Trevor Noah a couple of nights ago, his live stand-up.
That's the guy who hosts The Daily Show now, right?
Yeah, he hosts The Daily Show, and he's brilliant. He's from South Africa. He does clean comedy, but very like political, social driven comedy. But he was talking about like how like someone will say to him like, let's go out for tacos. And he's like, I've never had a taco. And they're like, you've never had a taco? And he's like, no, dude, I'm from South Africa. We don't have Mexicans there. Like, I've never had a taco. like people get so shocked when you haven't had their experience. And it's like, there's 7 billion people on the planet. Like, not everyone has their life. But
yeah. And you know what? I actually came across, so I was traveling for several weeks, and while I was doing that, I was like cleansing and like purifying my life from so many friggin' lingering things in my space. Yeah. One of which was I would scroll through the Facebook newsfeed every day and unfollow like 10 people to the point that I barely know anyone in my newsfeed anymore. And what's cool is I like posts have been popping up from people I didn't even know I was friends with from like God knows when, but this woman who's African posted something about the experience of like the dread she would have in elementary school growing up when it got to be like the first day of school and the teacher was trying to pronounce her name. And like no effort to like check in, see what it was. The teacher would just butcher it. She would feel so ashamed and embarrassed and then be like, just call me, you know, whatever was the convenient name that she chose that she could tell white people to use so they could just do it. And I'm like, God, like I couldn't even imagine that just like a moment having to be like, actually, I have a name, but you call me this because it'll be easier for you. Like that sucks.
Well, that's the immigrant experience. People coming over from, you know, in Ellis Island and they were changing their names to make it easier for not even, it was like white people coming over and we couldn't even say their names. So, we make a lot of concessions, you know, for all different reasons so that we're more acceptable.
God damn, I hate that. So
we should stop it. We should not do that.
And here's the thing, like this is one of the reasons why I love having a podcast. This is another conversation I was having recently about, you know, social justice and activism and things like that. It's like, listen, not every issue is my issue. If I take on all the issues, I have no time to actually do my sacred work in the world, take care of myself or live my own life too, all of which I do think are important things. But, you know, I can step in on the issues that do feel super important to me, that, you know, are close to my heart, that do tug on my heartstrings, that I feel so compelled towards that I couldn't like not stand up or step up or use my voice for it, rather than like just draining myself on everything. But this is what I love about having a podcast is we can have a conversation, we could spread some awareness, we could spark something that maybe a person hadn't thought about before, and then maybe they go on a tangent. Maybe they end up being something super passionate about, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. We could do what we could do.
We can do a lot.
I feel do a lot.
Too. Yeah, I think that we all, you know, everyone listening, you, me, we have a great responsibility.
Agreed.
You know, and so do what moves you, but definitely do something. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about praying to God. So I consider myself to be a very spiritual person. I go to church every Sunday. I pray a lot. My meditation practice is really a prayer practice. And I get a little bee in my bonnet when people say, something like, you know, like God saved me from this car wreck, or, you know, God really blessed me in this circumstance. Because I'm like, well, what about all the other people who like died in the car wrecks? And then there's like, oh, it's the great mystery of God and like, you know, the will of God. But my whole thing is, and because I'm, you know, a Bible reading Christian, like I will admit that, I will confess that I just don't think that's how it works. I think like we've been put here with free will to take care of each other. And you don't need to pray to an outside entity. You have to look to yourself as a piece of God and say, I have been put here to make a difference and I'm my brother's keeper. Like we take care of each other. So all the prayers have already been answered. If we all just do more, if we all show up in the way that we're supposed to, then we wouldn't have world hunger. We wouldn't have racism. We wouldn't have war. We really wouldn't, because the good would prevail. So I just challenge everyone to like find what moves you and do that thing. Like take the actual action. Don't pray about it.
Take the actual action. Yeah. And you know, and I'm not making this wrong. Like one form of activism is certain, like, spread awareness, like write about things on Facebook. But I also think really inform yourself, really educate yourself, really consider both sides of an issue so that you're not just spewing opinions. Because I think one of the most dangerous things about social media is people take other people's opinions as fact, especially those who have some kind of a platform and people have decided like that person must know better than I do because 350,000 people follow them on Instagram. Like not necessarily. Like we're not we're not fact checking people. So like be wise and like, you know, form your own opinions and run it through your own system too.
Yeah. I mean, all forms of activism are welcome by me. Yeah. I don't judge the way that people express themselves, whether they're standing up, they're kneeling down, they're writing, they're on a pulpit, whatever. But it's like there's that old proverb, and I'm not even going to say where it came from because it's probably wrong because I got it from the internet. But it's when you pray, move your feet.
Yeah. It's an African proverb. I use that one all the time myself. I don't know.
Is it African or is it Chinese? Did the Dalai Lama say it? I don't know.
I think African proverb for sure.
All right. Let's throw it up for the Africans.
We'll throw it up for the Africans. Big ups to the Proverbs. So I love this. I love this conversation because I do think it's a massive responsibility. Anyone with any kind of privilege, right? Because there's even privileged people who like, maybe you're out of work right now and you can't pay all your bills. And like, yeah, you're still a white person in America, but you know, you're having hard times. Like privilege doesn't negate that sometimes your life is hard or you have legit challenges, you know? And I think one of the dangers of this as well is like people feel guilty. Like they feel like I should shut up and be grateful for what I have. But yeah, you also deserve like the care, attention, energy, and like healing and like to take care of your own stuff just as much as starving children in other countries.
Oh, yeah. Look, the word privilege is kind of sticky because people freak out because they're like, look, I'm having a hard time. I don't feel privileged. So what I say, and this is something, you know, that I've gotten from my spiritual leadership is the idea of time, talent, or treasure. Like those are the 3 T's: time, talent, or treasure. We all have something in at least one of those categories to share. So it doesn't have to be money. Though for some, money is the easiest thing to give. But it's like, start with what's easy. You know, I have talent, you have talent. We get on the internet, we talk, we're, you know, charismatic, whatever. Time, you know, we can all spare a little bit of time, I believe. Because
by the way, that's coming from a woman with 5 children. So if you can spare a little bit of time.
I waste so much time.
A lot of us can spare a little time.
So I say start there. Time, talent, or treasure. Find one area where you have just a little bit extra and start there. Yeah.
And I love that. You just said like just a little bit extra. Like it's enough. It's sufficient. Like whatever you could do for the love of God, do it. But don't not do anything because you don't think it's enough.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Everything is good enough. I mean, imagine if everybody in the country right now gave like $1 to something.
God damn.
It'd be amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. So I want to go back to this. You mentioned that was, by the way, a tangent I had no idea we would go off on, but I'm really glad we did because I like to have that conversation. I feel like I learned something from someone every single time.
That was heavy. That was a heavy start.
Coming out hot, girl. It's called Untame Yourself. Prayer as meditation practice. So I'm with you. My meditation practice is prayer. I'm having a straight up conversation and then I'm like sitting and listening, but it really is much more of a back and forth and like a sit in stillness. And I know you just wrote a book. You have 4 minutes to change your life. And it's all about these quick meditation practices that you could actually do for anyone. Again, coming from a woman with freaking 5 children that runs like 17 businesses and a farm. And somehow drives from South Jersey to New York City, what seems like an obscene amount of times throughout the course of any given month. So talk to us about your practice. What I want to know first, and I'm sure it's covered in the book, so if people want to know more, they should just go grab that thing on Amazon. But what brought you? Were you always a spiritual person? Did you always have these types of practices? Did you have them and come away? Like, what's been your like evolution with having any kind of consistent practice?
I have been praying every single day of my life since I can remember. Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in a fairly religious household where prayer was very important. We went to church 3 times a week and it was evangelical church. So it was very like Bible based. And the greatest gift, you know, I have like a lot of stuff to say about my mom, good and bad, but the greatest gift that she gave me was when she said, because we, at the first church that we started at, didn't even have a minister. It was just us doing Bible study. You have a direct connection with God that no man, no minister, no teacher, no guru can come in between. And he hears you and he loves you as you are. And that was it. That was it. So I felt from 5 years old that I pictured it as like a little string that went from my heart up to the sky because that's where I thought God lived.
Oh my God, I love that.
And it was like this taut red string. And it was kind of like telephone when you have the paper cups in the string. Yeah. But I knew he heard me and I felt supported and I felt loved and I felt heard. And I carried that with me all the time. So this 4-minute practice that I have, these quick meditations, you know, people say, oh, it's like beginner or it's surface or it's superficial. It's like, that is the complete depth of my conversation that I'm in constantly with God. So maybe I meditate for 4 minutes a day. Maybe it's 10 times for 4 minutes, but it's really like these quick check-ins. Like, do you hear me, God? It's Bex. Are you listening? It's like that. And it's something that will sustain me for the rest of my life.
I'm very, very similar. I've never articulated it like that before, but I'm in that conversation and therefore meditating several times a day, any given day. And, you know, you bring up a point that is a real pet peeve of mine. I'm actually reading Danielle Laporte's new book, White Hot Truth. And she is lighting it up on so many of these things that like are my freaking pet peeves in this like self-help spirituality industry, which is so helpful in some ways and so harmful in other ways. But it's like that spiritual condescension that like, oh, it's surface level. If it's just 4 minutes, it's not deep enough. Like it's not deep unless you're sitting in practice for 30 minutes to an hour. How do you know? Because also like what you described is you've been actually doing this practice, whether you knew it was a practice or not, since you were like 5 years old or since before you can remember. So like you've got time on the field versus this guy who's sitting meditating for 30 minutes, who's maybe been doing it for a couple months, like who might be judging you for your short practice.
Right. And this guy who's been sitting for a couple months, like he might have hit that note and reached that quick enlightenment. Like I don't judge, but I can only tell you that the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
I am someone who suffered. And when I say suffered, it is like no exaggeration, suffered from anxiety and depression that was crippling, that landed me in the hospital the first time when I was 8 years old. I came from the shit, like my abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, like all the stuff. And I am someone today who is high functioning. Like I'm doing pretty awesome. Like I got these 5 beautiful children. One's in college studying biochemistry. I have this beautiful husband who loves me fully, and running this business. Like I'm super proud of myself. And it's from this practice. It's not that I don't ever have hardship. It's not that I don't struggle, but I have this practice that sustains me. And it is these short little conversations that I'm constantly in. I am just connected.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to offer to people. Just be connected.
I love that. And it's just like I want to say easy. It feels easy to me. Maybe it feels easy to me because this is what I do too. Maybe for other people, they're like, well, who has time for that? But this is why, again, this is what another reason I have a podcast, like so people can come on and they could be exposed to all different types of things and be like, man, these gajillion other things I've tried haven't worked for me. Let me try this 4-minute business and see what happens.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that my practice is, look, it's evolved. I've been doing this forever and every single day. It is a religious practice for me. But there are times that I will go sit with my teacher, Jai Sugram's one of them, and I'll go sit in his meditations for an hour or 2 hours. And I go deeper, you know, like if there's a way to go deeper. So my practice is all different types of things on all different days, but I'm just offering, this is something that's worked for me. Try it. If you like it, it's awesome. If you need to try something else, I just want people to know that connection to self and then connection to all that is, because that's what it is essential. Totally. Like it has to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Same, you know, we do similar things in different ways. And I think that I'm always so fascinated by, I'm always so curious rather to see how people deal with when life does get challenging, when they're faced with struggle or pain or whatever, how people deal with it who don't actually have any of these practices. I'm always just like, where do they put the pain? What do they do with it? How do they reconcile things?
I think we see it. I think we see people turning to a lot of things that are self-harming or avoiding, which is also self-harming. So yeah, we see it. We can tell.
Yeah, totally. So I want to go back to something because you said you were raised evangelical. I know you ordered it. I don't know if you started it. So I've been reading this book very slowly called Dance of the Dissident Daughter. This has been on my list for like 4 years. I know a lot of women listening have either already read it or have started reading it because I made a big post about it. I made like 3 posts on Facebook and Instagram about it because I was like, holy shit, this is... I don't know how I haven't read it yet, but I think it's probably because I would have lost it if I had any moments sooner. So Dance of the Dissident Daughter is about a woman's story from like a Christian tradition into sacred femininity. And she was raised in an evangelical Baptist church. And so if you have started it then? I started it and I'm going so slowly because it's like so slow.
It's like you gotta let it soak in and soak it. Yeah, it's a lot. It's
I've had a couple women be like, oh my God, I couldn't put it down. I'm like, oh my God, I've had to put it down for like days at a time to let these things soak in and simmer. So here's why I bring it up specifically. You mentioned God earlier. And again, I mean, I know I always say this, I get tired of saying it, but just for the people who maybe this is the first time you're ever listening, like you got to know, I don't care if you believe in God or Morgan Freeman or whatever. I have a friend who like prays to Morgan Freeman. I'm like, well, you know, he has that voice. It kind of sounds like it could be the voice of God. Who knows? Yeah. But, you know, as someone who is like, I think for your book launch party, did your shirt say feminist or did it say the future is female or something like that?
It said feminist. Yeah.
Feminist, right? And so still being comfortable with referring to like God as he, like talk about your relationship to that, because that's something I'm in constant dialogue around.
Yeah. The church that I belong to is emphatic about not referring to God as he or she.
Cool.
Because God is all things, right? So God is all things. God is you, me. I look at my fellow humans as little gods in skin suits. And I refer to God as he solely because of my background, solely because that's what I've grown up with. It feels comfortable for me. But do I believe that God is a man living in the sky? Zero belief in that. I feel that I am God represented here on earth as much as you are God represented here on earth. And God is all things good, bad, and in between. Yeah. God is a chair, a tree. It's energy.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm with you on that. I largely also refer to God as God and he, because I was raised Catholic and that's always been my thing. And I know what I mean. Like when I pray, I'm saying like, Holy Mother, Father, God, like creator of all things, whose essence is within us and in everything. So cool. I dig that because I know we do have a lot of spiritually curious people who are also like trying things on to see what fits and to see what's comfortable. So I don't know if you've gotten there yet, but in Dance of the Dissident Daughter, one of the things that she talks about is like sacred feminine symbology.
Okay.
And like, where is this imagery, whether it's in the Bible or whether it's in mythology or whether it's in all these other places, but she talks about the naming part, right? So we say God is he or whatever, but if once you start to find some kind of relationship with the feminine aspect of God, what do you call it? So where are you with that right now? And it's okay if you're like, I'm not anywhere with it.
I say he as habit. It's not even that I like or dislike it. I say it as a habit. I don't feel it that way though.
Yeah.
And the Bible is a tricky thing and religion's a tricky thing because, with my mother who was a nudity loving hippie, like she cleaned the house nude, but also was like really into God and Jesus and the Bible. And she taught me to read the Bible in a very different way than most people are absorbing the Bible. And a lot of times when I hear people say things, I'm like, did you read that in the Bible or did someone tell you that?
Yeah.
And it's like that whole idea of like, God's going to come and put his hand down or her hand down or whatever and change my life or manipulate my life. Like that doesn't really jive with free will. So I learned, I'm a New Testament Christian, love your neighbor and, love God, love your neighbor. And you have free will and what you do here, matters. So, and embrace this experience here. So yeah, I read it a different way.
I like
that. That's it.
I have more questions about this. Okay. But when you do relate to the feminine aspect of God, how do you think of it? And I'll give you my example. For me, I relate to like the mother. That's what I realized when I was reading through that book. I'm like, oh, the way I've been relating to it, even if I haven't articulated it, is I experienced like God as the father. So the feminine aspect of God for me is the mother. And like, for whatever reason, the word goddess has not ever been one that's like rolled easily, naturally, or felt like authentic to me. So I don't really use that word. I've tried it on, but it always doesn't really feel resonant in my system. But like mother or like even mama, like sometimes I sit down and I'm like talking to like my big divine mama,
I look at God in the context of who I am as a person. And you know me in real life, but people listening don't. And I consider myself to be someone who is filled with a lot of masculine energy. I think that my balance goes masculine, and I also express myself in that way, even though I totally embrace like the feminine too. So I look at myself and, what feminine aspect of God, what that means to me. And it doesn't get assigned a word like mother. Cool. It doesn't get assigned a word like father, because that attaches genitalia to it again. If that sounds right. I am a mother because that's my biology and that's how like I made babies and all that. But it's, it's just feminine and masculine feel sexless to me, genderless to me.
Cool. Yeah. And this is why I asked. So that's my context for it, but it certainly doesn't mean that other people have to have things. And it was one of the big things in the book. Yeah. So this is fun. How about telling us, what was different about the way your mom taught you to read the Bible? Because as you said that, this is one of the things I read. One of the things I really geek out on is I actually haven't gone back. This is something I've been resisting but thinking about for years, is going back and starting to read the Bible and like taking it upon myself to make my own interpretations. Mm-hmm. My conflict with that is I also know a lot of the translations have already been like biased anyway, but I digress. But I love people who do interpret the Bible in a way that's like, hey, this is actually what this meant. It wasn't like this way, like the patriarchal oppressive twist on it is one interpretation, or you could look at it this way. So how is it? Like, how did your mom teach you to read the Bible in a different way?
Well, she taught me to pray and to meditate because she said that's what Jesus did all the time. Mm-hmm. Jesus received messages from God, and then he would go out into the woods or the desert or wherever, and he would contemplate, he would think about them. So that was her challenge to me when taking in this information. Again, I have a direct connection with God, therefore God's word. So nobody needs to explain it to me. So read it, meditate on it, see how it sits with you. These were the words given to the writers from God. So it was filtered through their lens.
Totally.
And I have my own too. So I think that in those words, no matter what they say, there is an energy that is real, that is filled with truth, and it will land for you if you just explore it. So
this is fun. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, my buddy, Dr. Matt, who's been on the podcast, and we were talking about even the word truth, like how many people throw around the word, like even, like Danielle Laporte's stuff is like truth bombs. The name of the book is White Hot Truth, and how it's one person's interpretation of truth. Mm-hmm. And highly informed by lots of other people's and stuff like that, and like synthesized through like years and years of study and whatever. And how, again, everything has like a light and a dark side. How that's amazing that someone is going, hey, here's my experience. Maybe it'll resonate for you, maybe it won't. But there's some people who are just like in a place where they're still going to be dishing off their own authority and going, oh, well, she says this is the truth, so it must be, without like putting their own feels on it.
Yeah. So for me, when I say truth, I think God, love, and truth are the same thing.
Yeah.
So truth is like principle. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. It is. It's like a fact, like gravity. So truth is gravity. There are many ways to talk about it, to experience it, to filter it, all that stuff, which is the energy is truth. Like I said, with the words in the Bible, like the energy is truth, but the words necessarily aren't facts. Right. So I think truth is just a thing that we can't dispute, but how we experience, it's hard to get there. It's hard to see it with no filter. And in this lifetime, you might not. You might have to, be on that mountain and be enlightened, but who has a chance to do that? So maybe when we die, we all experience that truth.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. Hello, taking a quick break in the show to invite you all to a free call I'm hosting via Facebook Live on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Liz D'Alto, on Wednesday, May 3rd at 4:30 Pacific Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. This call is specifically for those of you who've been checking out the Wild Soul Movement weekend workshops and basically wondering, is this for me? Is it worth it? Should I go? So what I'll be doing on this call is going into more detail on what will be included in the 2-day weekend workshops, what you can expect, who it's for, the types of things you can expect to be addressed during the workshops, the different locations, all kinds of things. And then I'll also stick around to answer your personal questions. So here's the deal. If you're not able to make it live for that call, you can email us with your questions at hello@wildsoulmovement.com. But also, since it's Facebook Live, the recording will post right there on my Facebook page, and you will be able to check it out afterwards and post any questions in the comments as well. So again, Wednesday, May 3rd, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and whatever time that is in your personal time zone, wherever you are in the world, on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Liz D'Alto. So be sure to like and follow that page and tune in so that I can answer your questions, and you can decide if you want to join us in Vancouver at the end of May, in Salt Lake City in the middle of June, or in Toronto in the middle of July. That's the summer schedule. I'm also thinking about running a fall workshop sometime in Miami, perhaps. That's a big question mark. So additional info could be found at wildsoulmovement.com/2017 workshops. And if you're someone who's been thinking about it and has those questions, join us on May 3rd. Now back to the show. I'm going to move us out of the God conversation. I think I liked it, and I want to get to something else because
okay.
I love talking to you about being a mom, about parenting. Like, you have 5 freaking kids, so and obviously everyone's so individual. And you specifically had posted, I've been following little Beastie Summer since she was a little baby, and that was still
awesome.
She had her own Instagram account. I don't know if you're still posting on that,
no.
But what I have always loved about your experience and how you share your daughter Summer is she's such an individual, like right out of the gates. Yeah. And just like a strong personality and so unique. And I've always interpreted the way you share, like you really encourage that. So there were 2 things relatively recently within the last few months. She wanted a really short haircut.
Yeah.
And you were
she wanted a boy's haircut.
Oh, she described it as a boy's haircut.
I want a boy's haircut. Mm-hmm.
And I remember you posted something, you said to her, like, people are going to think you're a boy. And she was essentially like, I don't care. I'm Summer. Mm-hmm. I love that. And the second part of it was you had posted something on her birthday about how when you went for the, whatever is the
sonogram.
Thank you. Sonogram. Yeah. And the doctor, you were like, can we know the sex? And they're like, you're going to know, I could tell you the sex, but I can't tell you who you're going to get. And for me, I was like, that is the best, most concise expression of all of these gender conversations. Is like, I mean, I can tell you the sex is something, but it doesn't tell you who the person is.
Yeah.
So
Summer has been my greatest teacher in terms of understanding gender and masculine and feminine. Beyond anything else, she's taught me. And it started with that conversation with my midwife, who said, you can find out what you're going to get, but not who you're going to get. And it was prophetic. She could not have been more right. Summer is a Ninja Turtle wearing, Batman loving, like monster trucks. Also, like, she got into Barbies lately, which was super weird. Like, I was like not expecting that. Wants a boy's haircut. And I struggled with that a little bit because I was afraid that she was going to be ridiculed. I was afraid that there wasn't going to be a place for her. I did reach out to parents of, I jumped the gun. I went full on and I reached out to parents of transgendered children and just like, how do I have this conversation if it comes up? And they were like, you're doing everything right by kind of just letting her be. Mm-hmm. And, but she's just, you can't label it. When you let kids go, they'll show you who they are. And it's such an opportunity to learn something. Like, parents, learn something from your children.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to always teach them. I love it. I love Summer. She's the best.
Oh my God. It's so fun. And there's a woman, Dr. Shafali. Do you follow or read any of her stuff?
I do. I had dinner with her recently.
Oh, no way.
She's badass.
I was at a conference in January. Like, she probably would have been like one of the only, like, there were like 3 speakers I actually wanted to see. And unfortunately, I had a podcast interview scheduled during her talk. So I was so upset. I got to get her on the podcast. But right when I walked in at the end, like, that's what she was talking about. She was talking about how, like, your kids are your little teachers. Mm-hmm. So for any parent listening who may or may not, wherever you are and like how you parent or whatever, for someone who might be like, well, but I'm the parent, like, I know better. Mm-hmm. How do you hold both? Because there are times when you do have to be like, well, I'm the mom and like, this is for your safety and, whatever. Yeah. How do you hold allowing the child to be their individual self and teach you, and also being, the caretaker, the caregiver, the protector?
So we live on this planet, and I will just say, like, if you don't believe in reincarnation, we'll start from there. Like, this might be our first experience of the planet. And even if you have been here before, you forget, right? So here's your experience. My children need to know how to cross the street, tie their shoes, what foods are good for them and which aren't, how to figure out this world, how to interact in this world. They don't need to be taught how to love, how to feel, how to express themselves. They come in knowing that. So the soulful, loving, spiritual part of them, they come fully equipped. It will degrade over time with outside influence. So we have to reinforce that in them, that knowing in them, but we don't teach them anything new there. But yeah, they need to learn the other stuff, how to drive, do their checkbook, all that. And I'm a fairly strict parent. Like, I don't put up with a lot of nonsense. People are surprised by that. My children are super respectful. They don't talk back. They don't do those types of things.
Well, can you define nonsense though? Like, what do you mean by nonsense?
Oh, like they follow the rules. Like, I don't tolerate being late for curfew, like those types of things. Like, we live in a house that works a certain way. Everyone pitches in, everyone helps, everyone like shows up on time. We're accountable to each other. But I try not to yell at them, and I don't tolerate them yelling at me because I don't think that's a great way to communicate. But they express themselves. I almost know too much sometimes about their lives, especially the older teenagers. And I'm, scared and frightened by that, but then also excited, and I feel very grateful. So yeah, I don't need to teach them how to be soulful, connected people.
So this is great. So they grew up in this household where that is encouraged. They can express themselves. And you said we have to reinforce that. What are the types of scenarios that come up? Because they have to go out in the world. They have to be in a traditional school system if that's where your kids go to school. Like, you like go to all these lengths to like let them be who they are, but then they still or go out in the world that is not really built that way. So how do you reinforce when they have these moments of being like, hi, this is how it is in our house, but this is not how it is out there?
Well, my oldest, she's 19. She's a college freshman. She's opposite of me in a lot of different ways. She's conservative in a lot of things, like very liberal in her politics, but conservative about herself. She's an RA, so she's a resident advisor. And she has been having conflict with some of her residents and trying to figure out like the gossip thing and like the cattiness thing or whatever happens. And we've had fights about it because I have different ideas about how she should be dealing with other people. But then when it came down to it and we got deep in conversation, it was like, let's just take a deep breath and think about the truth in this moment. Let's pull off the idea that people might not like you. Let's strip away any doubts you might have about who you are, if you're right or wrong. Like, let's just unpack a little bit. Not even unpack. It's really uncover. Like, just keep like stripping away and get to the truth of this. And what do you think is true? Not right, but what's true. And it's all about like that meditation thing. It's like, go back and connect with who you are. Like, what are your values? What do you think is true here? And the same with my son, who I just pulled out of his senior year of high school to homeschool him. And we had to have a lot of conversations about what it means to be in this world. And sometimes there's going to be people who aren't so nice. And sometimes there's going to be things that you don't want to do and you maybe have to do them anyway. And I hate saying that, but it's like, it's what it is. And we came to the conclusion that he was going to be someone who was okay with being on the fringe and being outside of what is normal. And they're all different. I mean, people ask me to write a parenting book and I'm like, impossible. I have 5 kids and they're all so different. I have no idea what's going on with your kid. No idea.
Yeah. But I think that's what I was looking for, like the different scenarios. And it sounds like the answer is always come back to yourself. Who are you? Like, what's true for you? What are your values? How old are kids when you start talking to them about like, what is a value? That's like an adult kind of concept.
No, not an adult kind of concept.
Ooh, say more.
No, I mean, day one, it's like my 5-year-old, or she's 6 now, 6-year-old fights with the 2-year-old about like stuff and sharing or whatever. And it's like, that's a conversation about values. That's a conversation about how you want to show up in the world and how you want other people to react to you. Yeah. Like, if you don't want to share your toys, this is what happens. Like, these are going to be the consequences. Again, not right or wrong. It's the truth of what is. Yeah. And there's really not many adult conversations.
I just mean in terms of like, Summer's not looking at Annie going, I value sharing, like.
Yeah. I mean
in like the
what's
vernacular.
Important to her. There's different language. Like, it's like the sex talk. Like, there's different ways to talk about sex at different ages that I won't say what's appropriate or inappropriate, what feels good for you and your kids. And you'll know by their reaction if they're like,
oh my God, give us some of those. So you have 5 kids. How many of you had the sex talk with?
Oh my God. Oh, so the 19, 17 and 13-year-old, we talk about sex comes up.
Okay.
sex, like we talk about our body parts. We'll then include the 6-year-old and the 2-year-old in that, but we talk about our body parts. We're pretty open about like the function of them and like how things work. You know, I had 2 home births, so they know how that happens. And the older one, we've had, she revealed to me that she was sexually active by letting me come in to a gynecologist visit with her. And she shared this, so it's like, okay for people to know, but like she's almost more open with me than I am. It's kind of like they assault me with the sex talk rather than to them. But I think it's not like a talk. You don't sit them down and say like, all right, now we're going to talk about sex and like the ins and the outs. It's really like it's a way of integrating it into conversation when appropriate and knowing that it's another fact of life, just like eating, pooping, whatever.
Listen, but that's how my dad had the sex talk with me. I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast before. My dad says, you're going to love this so much. I'm like a junior or a senior in high school. My dad sits me down and this is the opening line. Listen, it's not like I think you're never going to get laid.
So Staten Island.
I was like, this conversation is over. I'm out. But it wasn't over what he did. And, you know, good for my dad. He used storytelling as an appropriate tool. He just told me a story of a friend of his that, like, got a girl pregnant, never knew. And then many, many years later, she was like, hey, this is your kid.
Oh, so start with the scare tactic.
Scare tactic was employed.
These are the bad things that can happen.
But, and you know, knowing my dad, that was his approach because that's where he was coming from. He was afraid of what might happen. So I was just curious for like, how do you broach it? Do you choose when to broach it? Is it more of like in response to their questions as they're discovering whatever?
It starts with body parts, then it heads to menstruation, then it heads, I don't dabble into like the boy stuff as much. I do leave that up to their dad. But because I don't want to, but I talk about menstruation and the process and all that. And then it gets into the actual sex and intercourse but I love your dad for that because it really doesn't matter how you do it.
Yeah.
It just matters that your kid knows that you are willing to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, totally.
So don't worry about the words.
I know. And I love that you're bringing that up because I thought of this earlier and then I forgot when you were talking about, I don't know, even something it's like loosely, it's like on the tip of my tongue, but not quite landing. Oh, being a strict parent. My parents were strict. And I remember being so irritated that like I wasn't allowed to go to the Jersey Shore on prom weekend like everybody else was, or I actually had a curfew. And let me tell you, if I was getting home later than the curfew, I'd get home and my dad would be sitting on the rocking chair on the porch, like waiting to like give me some shit and embarrass me. And at the time, it sucked because I just wanted to be able to do what everyone else did. My brother and I have had conversations about that much later. You know, once you get into your 20s and 30s and you see like the people you would never have thought who commit suicide or who have drug problems or who like drop out of school and like have all this shit going on. You're like, no way. There's a high correlation between those people being the people that you were like, man, their parents don't care what they do. And it's really, really interesting. And so, I mean, I've gone back and thanked my parents, like, you know, it sucked at the time, but I always knew I was loved. I always knew there was nothing you guys would not do to protect me. And that goes such a long, long way. Even recently, I was having a conversation with my mom, and I'm like, I gotta tell you, the way you guys loved the hell out of me, like there, again, I'll go back to, I was reading Danielle's book, and one of the things she was talking about is like this baseline of like self-hatred or self-loathing that like just about everyone experiences. And I'm like, I never experienced that. I never hated myself, and I never hated my body. Have I been uncomfortable with myself? Have I just liked aspects of myself, aspects of my body? Yes. But the self-hatred, the self-loathing, like I literally never experienced that because I was just, had such a foundation of love in my life. So I feel like, if you know, I'm not a parent, but if you fuck up everything else, just make sure your kids know they're loved. That's going to go a really long way.
That's the key. Like love looks like a lot of different things.
Yes.
And, you know, discipline is showing love, you know, and there's just so many things. Like, you know, my parents too, it's so funny because I talk a lot about like the bad stuff because that's what we talk about sometimes. And I talk about the stuff that they didn't do right. But they were always so proud of me.
Yep.
They always said how smart I was and how I was going to do great things. And I knew that they loved me. And that's what I think has given me so much courage. And they, you know, again, like my mom, like, God loves you. We love you. And
yeah.
That's
amazing. And I always like to address both sides, because whenever I say something like that, I could always hear the people who are listening who are like crumbling, like chest going in, sinking right now because like you didn't feel loved growing up. And I just I want to acknowledge those people and whatever that experience is like, but there's always an opportunity, whether it's to heal that in yourself or to do better for your own children and your own experience or whatever. But I just want to send a little love blast to anyone who's like, damn, that would have been nice.
Yeah.
So what else? I love geeking out on parenting stuff because I'm not a parent. I know we have so many moms, so it always just feels like such a good service when we have someone who's like has so much experience. Yeah. So I know you have become, it's doula, not midwife, right?
It's a doula. So I'm like the helper. I'm the birth helper.
I freaking love this so much. Why did you do that?
Okay, so the real answer is because I am addicted to the childbirth process, and I could have more babies, but that would be just crazy. So I wanted to be part of that process, and it was very selfish. The other part of it, the sub part of it, is that I, wanted women to have births that felt good to them. A lot of people think doula and they think of someone like natural childbirth, medication free, all of those things. But I just want to be there in service to whatever birth process choice that the woman makes. It's just such a cool experience.
And I know it's a relatively recent thing, like within the last couple of years, right?
Yeah. It's been 2 years. Yeah.
So how many births have you gotten to be there for?
In the 2 years, upwards of 24.
Oh, wow.
I don't have the exact number. Yeah. It was a hard 2 years. I'm stepping back a little bit.
Yeah. Damn. Okay. So why are you obsessed with the childbirthing process?
It is the coolest thing that happens on the planet. It's cool. Like there is a thing inside of you, a person that is growing, and then it comes out. It's so alien and bizarre. I mean, I should say prettier words around this, but it's just like the weirdest, coolest thing. It comes outside and then it grows into its own thing, and then it can make something come outside. It's primal. It's, wherever we go with technology, wherever we go with like the iPhones and all this like crazy, weird, awesome, stupid stuff, this just reconnects us to who we are. Like we're animals.
Yeah.
That is cool.
And how many animals have you witnessed being born on your farm?
We only have neutered rescues. So
okay.
My animals they don't
give
birth. My
pigs
pigs aren't neutered, but they don't have babies now.
All right. So I have a question that I know I asked you before the interview. Is there anything you don't want me to ask you? But it just dawned on me that this is so personal. You're more than welcome to be like, I don't want to get into that. Have you ever had a miscarriage?
Yes.
How many?
1.
Okay. Here's why I asked, because it is a woman in my Facebook group. This was like, a month or two ago. Posted, she had a miscarriage. She was like, I'm having the hardest time. Has anyone else had this experience, and how did you deal with it? And the army of wild soul women came out. I'm getting emotional. All these women sharing their experiences was just like the freaking most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life on this thing that like nobody talks about. I mean, I don't want to say nobody talks about. It's just not like not as free-flowing of a conversation taboo. As like a lot of things. It's taboo. Women think there's something wrong with them. They blame themselves, but it's like, holy crap, all the various different reasons and different types or whatever. So I'm curious, just from your experience, if you feel like sharing, how did you handle it or how did you deal with it?
It's interesting. My third pregnancy ended in miscarriage. So I already had 2 relatively healthy children. My second child was born visually impaired. Both my boys are visually impaired, but relatively healthy children. And third pregnancy ended in miscarriage. It was early on in the pregnancy, but late enough that I delivered at home. So I actually saw the fetus, the baby, which is something that I've never said before, but that was a profound experience. When it happened, the conversation I had with myself was, wasn't like I was broken or anything. It was just like, oh, well, you know, this happens. You've had 2 healthy babies. You could do this again. You know, like I knew all the statistics and whatever. So it didn't feel, it wasn't upsetting at the time. But then when I approached the due date, dreams of what would have been, of who was that child. And that still comes up for me because, like, you know, I don't know. I don't know if the soul enters the body at conception. I don't know if it, like, I don't know when any of these things happen. Nobody knows. But what I feel is that there was a purpose to that, and that it was connected to something. There was a God being or soul that came through me, and for those brief weeks. But yeah, I do wonder who that child was and who that child would have been and what personality would have been attached to that child.
Yeah.
I was lucky to have other kids and went on to get pregnant again 3 more times. So
yeah. Well, and so A, thank you for sharing that, and B, thank you for like landing just some like further insights around how complex miscarriage actually is. It's different if for someone who hasn't had a baby yet and wants someone so bad and they're having miscarriages and they're like, oh my God, am I ever going to be a mom? Versus someone who already has children and was like, okay, well, I already have some healthy children. I could be grateful for that. Versus, you know, someone who actually saw like had to see the baby or like it passed through or didn't and had to get a procedure. There's so many factors and variables. So, you know, I bring this up to just make it less taboo. Any effort that we could put towards making it less taboo and letting our women know, like, if you're someone who like hasn't dealt with this or hasn't had the experience and you do want to come in our Facebook group and just be like, yo, this happened and it was crazy and I haven't grieved it or whatever, like, we are happy to have that conversation because it's like so many people. I actually asked some relatives. I have many women in my family and I've started asking all of them. They probably don't appreciate it. I'm like, have you ever had a miscarriage? Did you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell anyone? What was it like? And it's interesting how some people, and I don't know if I believe this or not, some people's responses has been like, yeah, like it's just a thing that happens. And they literally have it's kind of just like, yep, that's just like part of life. And I wonder if that's true in their system.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, because I was a person who said that. Like, oh yeah, I had a miscarriage, but then I had more healthy babies and like everything was fine. And I did not honor the actual pain and confusion that I felt because I thought because I had healthy children that I wasn't allowed to feel pain.
Yes.
Because there were women who had like much more traumatic stories. Like I've guided women through miscarriages as a doula, and it's even hard for me to say like I know how you feel because I feel guilty for having healthy children when I haven't yet.
Oh my God. This is such a, like, we don't have that much more time left and I've just opened a can of worms, but I'm going to keep going on it anyway. So at the time we're recording this, it's April 10th. So it was recently April Fool's. Do you know Shiva Ray? The yoga teacher?
Yes.
She made a post on April Fool's. Like her and her husband are like in their 50s and it was like, hey, like we're expecting April Fool's joke. And like, if you know this woman, like I've gone to some of her workshops, like obviously no malintent, obviously just wild oversight that like birthing and like getting pregnant, fertility these days, like such a very tender and a very sensitive topic for so many people. And oh my God, she got so many comments of people being like, are you kidding us? Like this is so insensitive, like so tasteless, all these things. And you know, I don't have that experience, so I can't weigh in on it, but I'd be super curious for you. Is that something you would be offended by? I could certainly put myself in people's shoes and try to see both sides of it. Like, yeah, it was just a joke, or, oh my God, that's the most horribly offensive thing in the world. Where do you stand on that?
Personally, it would not offend me. Personally. For whatever reason. There is a movement, I don't know if you've seen this show up like right before April Fool's, where a lot of, organizations and individuals will post like, please don't post these types. Don't post the I'm pregnant joke.
Oh, interesting.
Because a lot of people do that. A lot of people do it. And, God, I can't even, it's like I have a lot of women in my professional circle. I'm in masterminds. We call them mistress minds. I'm in these circles with women who, have different successes in life.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. My husband's says to me, you know, when I'm struggling with my business, I don't know why I'm getting choked up right now, but when I'm struggling with my business or I'm caught in the comparison thing or whatever, he'll say to me, Rebekah, we have more than most millionaires. We know every kind of love. Yeah. We have each other. We have the romantic love. We have our children. We have that love. Like we have all the things that people can't just go out and get. Yeah. You know, like I can create an awesome funnel and put a lot of money into it and make a lot of money on my next program. Like I can do that. But there's so many people who want children who can't have them. And I don't understand that pain. Yeah. So it's just for those types of things, whether it's right or wrong, or someone shouldn't be triggered or they shouldn't, like, just don't do it.
Yeah. Probably just better to stay out of it.
Yeah. Let's care for each other more.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. So interesting. All these sensitive things. I love it. All right. I'll end on this. I saw you recently posting. We'll bring it up. We started heavy. Yeah. We were going back heavy, which, you know, this is real mother friggin' life. And this, by the way, I'm feeling a little bit of weird satisfaction because I know you don't cry often.
I'm not. This is my dry cry. I'm just like.
And it, like, obviously, my goal is not to make people cry, but like it just happens all the time. Grace and Frankie, let's talk about this for a second. So I saw you mention it, and then I heard it mentioned like by 17 other people. And I had actually seen Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin before the show came out on the Jimmy Fallon show. So for anyone listening, Grace and Frankie, it's a show on Netflix. It's Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin. The basis for the story is their husbands were business partners for like decades and, you know, came out to them that they've been gay and they've been having an affair for 20 years. And now that they can get married, they're leaving their wives and they're getting married. And then it's kind of like a modern day Odd Couple because these women end up like kind of bonding, and it's hilarious, but it's also like so freaking raw and so real. So I watched like 6 episodes of it last night and I'm crying my face off. I'm like, this is supposed to be funny, but like, this is real shit. So you had posted something about it. What do you love about this show? Why do you watch it?
So my mother passed away in 2013 and she is Frankie.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So you feel like you're hanging out with your mom?
Yeah, my mother is Frankie. I'm in a Grace and Frankie relationship with my business partner, like right now, because we're like the odd couple and we have so much fun together and I love her dearly. But it's like
Danielle Borucki?
Yeah, Danielle, she's awesome. And I see myself in them. Like I am so much Grace. I am so much Grace, like left-brained, you know, masculine energy, take control, like type A. But then like the Frankie just appeals to me. And it's like, when I picture myself in retirement, it's Frankie 100%. I just think it's the realest thing on TV right now.
Yeah. It's so, and you know, I always love especially with quote, spiritual people. And I would throw you in that bucket. You wrote a book about meditation and prayer. I always love talking about TV because it's like, it's real, right? Like it's, you know, I think there's, you know, living where I live, I talk about this all the time, like in this quote, self-labeled conscious spiritual community, there's just like real things that like we all still get to do as humans, like go to the movies and watch Netflix sometimes. So I'm always super curious about what people are getting up to and getting into. So is there anything I didn't ask you that you were like, damn, I really hope we talk about this on the interview?
We didn't talk about not wearing bras, and I'm really curious about that, but we can have that in another conversation because I love my bra. But no, you hit it. This was so much fun.
It's juicy. This is what we do around here. That was so funny. I posted that thing and I knew you wouldn't really care if it was you, but I didn't ask you. So I didn't like tag your name on it. But for anyone who follows my Facebook page, Bex had texted me yesterday and she was like, is this video too or whatever? She's like, well, I'm going to wear a bra because I'm not Liz D'Alto.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
always
great.
Bra. Always. I just started not wearing a bra to sleep.
Wait, like you used to wear them to sleep?
Yeah, like a sleep bra. Like, yeah. Yes. I like my bra.
Good for you. Hey, listen, I'm a judge. Just like to sleep, that shocks me because I feel like I would be very uncomfortable. But great. I love that. To each their own is one of the core values of untaming yourself and wild soul movement, which I happen to learn from my own mom growing up. So, Bex, thank you so much. What is your current, I feel like you have a gajillion websites. Where's the best place for people to find you?
It's BexLife.com. It's always been BexLife.com.
To me, you're just like prolific and everywhere though. And you're on all the social medias. You're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. Do you have a favorite?
Facebook, I've been digging. Yeah. I love those conversations that happen on Facebook.
Cool. So, and do you operate mainly from your personal page or a professional page or both?
Both, but definitely friend me on my personal page because that's fun too. That's where you're going to get like the sass.
The sass. Bring in the sass. All right, cool. So everyone, if you want more Bex in your life, go check her out. Check out the book on Amazon. We'll put links to everything in the show notes. And you're the best. Always so fun and so juicy of a conversation with you. And I miss your freaking face. I got to see you in real life sometime soon.
Yeah, we'll do that. And congrats on your 1 million downloads. I saw that.
Oh my God, thanks. How did that happen? I don't know. But thank you so much. Thank you everyone who listens and downloads the show. So amazing. So, all right, y'all. Thank you so much. Bex, thank you. And we'll talk to you later.
First of all, just recognizing for what it is. Okay, I'm shaming myself right now. How does that feel in my body? Really, how does that feel in my body? Shame is the lowest vibrating energy. Okay, this is feeling heavy. This is feeling I can feel in my throat. I can feel in my chest. And then asking yourself, what can I do? What do I get to do to unshame myself right now? The second after you overeat, the second after you hop on the scale and think that you're a piece of shit. The second, what can you do in that moment? And it's really about real-time decisions and real-time energetic shifting. And let me explain that. It's not about, okay, cool, I'll deal with that later. Let me just go to work. And when I come back from work, I'll figure it out.
You're not gonna.
No, you're not gonna. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go home. You're gonna binge eat again because you inserted that energy of shame in the morning and you've carried it all throughout your entire day. And because you're already in a shameful state, your mind is thinking of other reasons to shame yourself. Oh, the laundry's not done. Oh, the kids were late for school. Whatever it is, you're anchored in an energy of shame, and that is carrying throughout your day. So the moment you do something that perhaps might not be aligned with the transformation that you decided in advance you wanted to take, it's about asking yourself, how can I unshame myself? Or simply, how can I love myself a little bit more in this moment? And when you are present and you focus on that in the moment, you will feel that shame transcending into a lightness. You will feel that visceral reaction in your body dissipate into just a little bit of lightness. It's okay, this is okay. This is okay. I get to feel this right now. Why? Because this is all part of the process.